1. So I had a 7-top prix-fixe menu with 4 courses scheduled tonight in our private dining room. It was booked by a third-party agency. The restaurant told the agency we couldn't take it due to holiday volume. The third-party agency booked it anyway. We contacted the host party and worked it out. We made it clear that there was a miscommunication. We could accommodate them, but there was a strict 2-hour time frame. They had to be out by 8 p.m. They agreed and said they understood. At 6, the host and his wife showed up with decorations for the table. Okay, no problem, this happens. It's the holidays, and they want to show their employees a good time. The table was cleared and reset. I tucked the hosts up and got them some drinks. They love our restaurant, all good. 6:30 rolls around and 3 more show up, more drinks. 7 p.m. the last 2 show up. I hear the host ask if they had issue parking, which is common where I work. They say no. So these 2 people knew the party was at 6 and just didn't care. They showed up an hour late because... why the hell not? Classy. Now that they finally arrived, I pop a bottle of bubbly on us to apologize for the trouble and miscommunication that occurred between the booking agency and us as an olive branch. At this point, I have already ordered the apps. So they arrived when the apps did. Salad course came shortly after. I have a time limit here, and I'm not trying to lose money because some people are too self-absorbed to show up even remotely on time. To be fair, the host did definitely show his displeasure about his workers' tardiness to me, before any of them showed up. I assure him it was fine, and we would make it work. I got the meals in by 7:30 and at the table at 7:45, with dessert still to come. My executive chef and owner knows this isn't ending at 8 like we had discussed. No effing way. I stay in communication with him so we can handle the next party that now has to wait for their reservation. Desserts were ordered when food hit the table, one of which takes 15 minutes. Food was boxed and plates were cleared at 8 when dessert hit the table. Unlike this party, our 8 o'clock reservation showed up promptly, of course. Owner and I both make ourselves known and own up. I cocktail for them while they wait and assure them that we are doing everything we can. This time of year can be tough, doing our best to accommodate everyone, blah blah blah. New party is understanding. 8:15, I'm able to do the thing. Does anyone else need anything? No? Great, here's the check. The one benefit of the booking agency is 20% gratuities included. So I know no matter what I'll be taken care of. I drop the check with almost $800 and inform the host that the gratuity is added. Process payment and wait. Will they linger? To my delight, they did not. I pick up the receipt, which was folded so I couldn't see the payment, and thank them again. Obviously, at this point, I take the payment to the side station and see if there is extra gratuity. There was. $400. So on top of the $135, they left me an additional $400. Merry Christmas to me. At this point, I don't really give a damn if they stay till close. But by 8:30, they put their coats on and bounced. I did check back in with the host and confirm he understood that gratuity was added. He did. They said they were spreading the love. I loved them so hard. Servers swarmed the table and a reset happened in minutes. The next party was awesome too, not $530 worth of awesome. I will always take $80 on $380 though. 2. Tonight I got sat with a 5-top, and they were waiting on one more while I got their drinks, and asked if they needed anything else while they were waiting, and they said no. A few minutes later I stopped by because one of the ladies kept looking at me. I went to ask if they were still waiting or if they needed anything as one of the ladies interrupted me.
I'm really hungry.
I apologized and asked if she needed to order anything, and she told me to bring extra bread and a side salad with extra dressing and croutons. I repeated it back, and then the girl next to her starts to order. The first girl then interrupts her to order a side, and then she touches my arm and says,
I'm gonna tip you real good.
I hate being touched, and on top of that, the tip comment made me really uncomfortable, so I kind of stuttered and said, okay, and then started getting another person's order. While I was getting the order, the girl starts talking loudly across the table.
Since you didn't laugh at my joke, I'm not tipping you at all now.
I just kept getting the food orders and didn't respond. I brought everything out and acted like I normally do. I checked and made sure she got her extra dressing and things and got her another drink. I thought she was over it until the joiner who had ordered her food already asked to get an add-on to her steak, and I told her it'd be around $2 extra because she no longer had a menu and I wanted to be aware of that. Then the lady who made the joke earlier said I was being childish. I guess she thought I was being rude saying it was extra. I'm supposed to tell people about upcharges before though. Anyway, after the checks were cashed out, I went by to give a couple bags, and while I was trying to say goodnight, the lady said,
"Read the paper."
And I just walked off, so I assumed she left me a note. Yep.
"Smile, you was so rude."
Then she complained about me to our host as well. I ended up being called into the office and having to explain to my managers why a customer was telling us she's never coming back because of me. Also, during all of this, I tried to refill the water and the lady turns and says,
"No, thank you, sir. Ah! Oops!"
I'm a girl, and they've been sitting here for like 40 minutes at this point, and it just seemed intentional. I wasn't offended, though. I don't care, I just don't understand why someone would go so far out of their way to try and make my night stressful and possibly get me fired because I was uncomfortable with a joke. I gave great service, I laughed at other things and joked. I just got uncomfortable for a second, and I get treated like I was so offensive. 3. So, it's been a few years since I worked here, but I was detailing my experiences to someone, and it got me thinking about all the crazy things that happened at this job. So here we go. First, I was constantly having to deal with really creepy people. I would talk to people sometimes, especially if the mall was empty, and I appreciated if they weren't weird. But one guy, for example, just came up to me and started telling me about his friends who were 18 and getting married. Did I think that was too young? How old was I? 19-year-old female at the time? Which I reluctantly told him. Did I want to get married? I didn't even have a boyfriend at the time, so I told him no. But he kept talking. I also had a guy ask me if I'd ever been home with a black guy, and did I want to? When I said no, he proceeded to sit with a friend who he didn't talk to and stare at me from a table directly in front of me. Second, I've had food thrown at me twice. Once it was an entire bowl of fresh hot chicken. When I refused to give this woman a 6th sample, I was technically supposed to cut them off at 3. The second was just one piece that I had given to a little boy, about 3. It was a decent-sized piece, especially for a kid, but his mother ran up behind him and snatched it from him, causing him to burst into tears and threw it at me, yelling and cussing me out because I was a horrible person to insult her child with such a small piece of chicken, and my mother should have raised me better than that. Third, I got asked constantly why I wasn't Chinese, and if the chicken was actually cat. It was funny the first time, not so much the 75th. Fourth, I had to moderate pretty much all the arguments, because the rest of the staff didn't really speak English too well. A man insisted that he had found an eggshell in his fried rice, and that it was wrapped up in a napkin he was holding but refused to show us, and told us he wanted his food for free. A woman insisted that she had gotten halfway home before realizing she had paid with a 20, and we had given her change for a 10. We balanced the book several times and didn't have any extra cash. Fifth, we stopped making fresh food about 30 minutes before the mall closed. A woman actually called mall security on us because we were out of honey chicken. 4. The ungrateful dad, does a fraction of the work but demands a 50-50 tip share. I worked with a lot of people who felt this way in my years serving. Usually it's one or two knuckleheads who haven't been in the business long enough to realize the difference in workload. Or sometimes they're just bad waiters and haven't quite figured that out yet. But my first bartending gig was special. For the first and last time in my career, I found myself standing amongst my otherwise smart, witty, and hard-working coworkers, being the only one at the tip-split cult meeting without my glass of Kool-Aid. I'm pretty sure if my old co-workers hear this story, they'll know I'm talking about them, but I also think they've all grown up enough now to appreciate how ridiculous it was. Storytime. My first bartending gig was opening up a small coffee and cocktail spin-off shop downtown from our very successful original location in the suburbs. The main location had a 15-seat bar, a coffee roastery and kitchen, and was staffed with 2 bartenders, 2 baristas, and at least 1 barback. It was awesome, and it was always packed. Some of the best coffee roasters in the southeast teamed up with one of the best mixologists around, and made something pretty spectacular as a result. Naturally, with all the success, they wanted to expand. The new spot was in a not yet finished new entertainment district downtown, with a 6-seat bar and attached to a hotel on the other side of the building from a sports bar. It only needed 2 staff, 1 bartender and 1 barista. It was quaint, cozy, and absolutely perfect for the area. The biggest downside, however, was that 80% of that entertainment district wouldn't open for business for another 6 to 12 months after its grand opening. For coffee, this is okay, since the hotel is no competition. For the bar, though, being the smallest, priciest, and most remote bar in the building is an uphill battle. Having no outside foot traffic is really unfortunate, and having an established, better in every way sister bar just about 10 minutes away is a nightmare. But we made the best drinks, we had the most complete training, and we had industry connections. We made it work by being a bartender's bar, by building lasting relationships with our regulars, and slowly picking off the people from the main location who wanted a more quiet one-on-one vibe for their cocktails. We weren't making as much by half, but we could call the bar our own, and that was enough. With only 1 bartender and 1 barista on the night shift, we would naturally have to act as one another's support staff. If coffee got busy, the bartenders would make pour-over coffee or run the register, so the barista could focus on running the espresso machine. If we got slammed, we'd ask the baristas to run dishes or get ice. We tipped them out at 30%, regardless of whether we needed their help that night. We had both just spent 3 months barbacking at the original location during our training, and we understood that a well-bribed barback is worth their weight in gold. At some point, though, somebody tried to put on their thinking cap and realized that the bartenders were bringing in more tips than the baristas, and thought that was ridiculously unfair. At some point, they must have shared this thought with the other baristas, and a while after that, they passed this complaint on to management. About a month into this new venture, I got a text around noon from our other bartender, explaining that we were going to have an all-staff meeting before her shift, and that I needed to drop everything and get down here. So I dragged myself out of bed, threw on some clothes, and made my way downtown. Somehow, after careful consideration, management had decided they were going to institute a 50-50 tip share for the night staff. Baristas were starting to fight over weekday morning shift, and someone had brought it to their attention that the bar staff were only doing a 30% tip share. We had a staff of about 10 baristas, 2 bartenders, and 2 barista managers. Bar management was run by the original location. We were trusted to run the bar ourselves, but not for manager pay, naturally. They were all in attendance before I got there. Apparently, they had told our other bartender of this new policy. She said, "Ha! No!" And all staff had been called so she could state her case, and I could make my own decision, get in line or find a new job. I did not know this. Apparently I was the only one. As our manager explained the situation to me, I was dumbfounded. I checked my phone to see if it was April already. I scanned the faces of the room, hoping to catch someone break from the prank. Our other bartender explained that if this is their decision, she is walking, then left the room to cool down, have a smoke, and try and get a hold of our bar manager and senior bartender. We found out later that he too was not informed of this decision, but shift had started at our sister's store and he wouldn't have been able to make it anyway. They then asked me what I thought. I don't really know how long I just stared at them. I wasn't mad, I was just so confused. I couldn't piece together how this made any sense. How management could, with a straight face, call this fair, or what all my co-workers really thought was going to come from this. But my first response was the same: no thanks. After spending a few minutes composing my thoughts, texting my manager to no avail, and ignoring the increasingly uncivil threats from management, I realized there was no way to explain this without sounding incredibly patronizing, but I didn't have any alternative. Sometimes people need things spelled out for them, I guess. I tried to explain that if the bar is doing any business at all, the baristas should all be making more than day shift by half. In fact, they were. That maybe hosting a high school Bible study on Friday nights isn't ideal for opening a bar. That it shouldn't be shocking to anyone that people's desire for coffee tends to wane a bit at night if they want to sleep. That being the third bar in the building, but the only one not labeled as a bar, you can only see the coffee shop from the lobby, is not a great way to bring in late-night customers. That in spite of all that, yes, selling liquor brings in bigger tips than coffee, mainly because we spend an hour or two with our customers instead of 30 seconds. I don't know why I had to explain these things to grown adults, but here we are. Then I realized I was just circling the issue. I realized that management didn't just decide to do this out of the blue, that someone had been complaining about it, and that everyone, or at least a majority, looking back at me, had agreed it was a good idea, that they felt they deserved a 50-50 split of the tips. It clicked all at once, and I was pissed. I fired back by explaining that we spend more time helping coffee staff than they do helping us, but we've never demanded a penny of their tips. In contrast, we always tip them out, even on nights when they don't help out. If they want fair, then I should keep my tips and they can keep theirs. My customers can wait an extra 30 seconds when they see I'm busy. It's a 6-seat bar, we're never that busy. I explained that 30% is on the high end for most barbacks at busy locations. But we're not busy and they're not barbacks. In our 3-month training program at the home location as barbacks, we were never tipped out more than 30%. And we were making drinks, taking orders, running dishes and ice, managing customers, refilling water, restocking the well, squeezing juice, and cleaning up for 2 bartenders there, on top of the training program. Getting ice once or twice a night isn't barbacking, but we've sure as hell been paying you like it was. At the end of it all, I tried as gently as possible to explain to management that this boneheaded decision would sink the business. We made more barbacking at the original location, so much more. We spent 3 months getting trained to be some of the most knowledgeable bartenders in the city, and there were no trainees in the pipeline right now. That 80% of my customers are other bartenders and cocktail enthusiasts who come back because they want to learn something new from me. That if just one of us quits, they'll have to choose between closing the bar on off-peak nights or paying 20 hours of overtime until a replacement can be found. Most importantly, they won't find a replacement. We can get a job anywhere in the city at this point. I'm literally working at the sports bar down the hall on my off days. And I didn't even have to interview. The bar staff of our city are my best customers and not a single one of them would take my place under those conditions. No bartender would willingly choose a bar with no customer base and 50% tip share for 90% less help when there are dozens of other bars in the city. And that our bar manager would never allow it. And if they try to pull this stunt without telling him, you know there will be hell to pay. Then I left too. To this day, I don't know who complained. Our bar manager called me later that night to say it's sorted, business as usual tomorrow afternoon. And yes, he read them the riot act. Our other bartender got an offer from Patterson House and moved to Nashville a few weeks later. A few of our barista managers tried their hand at tending the bar on off days, but quickly abandoned the idea. I don't know why management thought it was a good idea. I don't know how they thought it was going to go over. But nobody ever complained about their tip share again. 5. Apparently, there is a meetup group that gets together on Christmas morning with the sole purpose of hooking up service industry people. I have served, managed, cooked, etc. for 18 years, and have never had anything like this happen to me. Nor am I likely to ever have this happen to me again. I gotta share it. I hope y'all can appreciate it. I work in a diner. For all the aforementioned 18 years I have worked in the same place. It is a good place with great mom-and-pop owners. On the 24th, I take off each year and spend with my 4 kids and family. On the 25th, I get up and go in at 6 a.m. to work. I do this so other people who don't have the luxury of taking the 24th off can have the morning with their kids. They also have small kids, and mine are not little anymore. 2 of my kids have worked in the service industry beside me since they were 13. On Christmas morning, my 18-year-old son, we will call Dan, came in with me. He doesn't work in my restaurant any longer, but he wanted to hang with me for the day. We love working together. I'm really glad my son came to work with me. No other server showed up. I was managing and serving this shift and would have been all alone had Dan not drove in with me. We only had 1 cook, no dish, no bus, no host, nothing. At 9 a.m., a group of 15 walk in, all big hungry guys who start arranging their table themselves, moving things and getting settled. I explained that things might be moving slowly today as lots of our staff was out for the holiday. These guys were totally understanding and I felt good about them. At that moment, a guy comes in off the street, saying he was sent to me for orientation. I laughed in his face for a second. I asked if he was willing to work. He eagerly said yes, and he puts on an apron and hits the dish pit. Who trains on Christmas? A dude who really needs a job, I guess. Our first Christmas miracle had just occurred. I tell Dan that I will take the 15 top. He has a handful of other tables, and we are tag teaming everything. We had agreed earlier to split everything down the middle that we made when we realized we were going to be alone. I'm just better with large tables, and I know I would be helping cook for these guests, so all the better to hear straight from them what they wanted. I take their order, nothing too complicated, and head back to the kitchen and help cook by manning the grill side. They get their food pretty fast. Me and Cook have worked together that whole 18 years, so we are like a well-oiled machine. They all paid separately or in pairs. I drop the checks and have a pretty good time with the guys, joking and laughing. They've been a fun table, and I'm glad they came. I always wonder about people who have no one on Christmas morning and feel a little sad for them. These guys seemed like old friends, though, and I'm glad they have each other. Little did I know these guys only meet once a year, and for this event, and that they were watching me very closely. The first 2 guys pay. One guy gives me a $100 tip. The next guy gives me $50. I want to thank them, but want to do it on the down low because I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. I go over to them each and give them a whisper, "I'm about to hug you," and then give them both a little hug and whisper thank you. No one seemed to notice because this was a loud, busy table. They were all watching though. 3 more guys give me the credit card slips, $200, $100, and another $50. I'm standing there stuttering and dumbfounded. They realize the jig is up, and all of them start shoving money at me. I lose my shit and start crying. They're laughing their asses off like they just pulled the best prank of their lives. My son runs over at the sight of his crying mother, and I show him 2 of the slips. One says 100 and the other says 200. He knew I had just gotten a 100, so he is thinking this is the same one. He glances at the 200, and he thought it said $2, so he is confused. Then it hits him. It's like a scene from a bad 80s movie. There's crying and laughing and hugging, and then they explain who they are and what they're doing. Me and Dan are just freaking out. They left us $750 total. Once these Christmas fairies left, me and Dan did some quick math. We had $400 in cash. We decided to split it with Cook and the new guy that saved our asses on Christmas morning. We went back to the kitchen and made it rain 20s, not really. We handed it over like sensible people. And both of them were so happy. It felt great to share with them a few $100, and made the rest of that shit show of a Christmas brunch rush a tad easier for all of us. I love working in the service industry. It's true we see the worst of humanity in our field, but we also see the best sometimes. Today I saw something crazy and beautiful. These guys planned this, do it yearly, and take crazy joy from doing it. I'm glad they exist. Not just because I became richer financially yesterday, but because I became richer in feeling the love of humanity. Thank you, Christmas fairies. May you all have a beautiful new year. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Spinning Plates number 77. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Okay, this will be the first new video uploaded of the new year. You guys will get this on Saturday. Well, it's technically Saturday now as I'm recording this, but very, very early on Saturday morning. I hope you all had a very nice Christmas, a very nice New Year. I hope you were all safe and sound. Oh, hang on. The weather sounds like it's getting a bit rambunctious outside. Well, I was planning on going shopping tomorrow, but, well, we'll see if it calms down. I need to clear rubbish out the chest freezer so I can refill it with vegetables and nice things to eat and so on. Not so much a resolution as just I've enjoyed myself over the holiday period, so it's time for Healthy Freezer to rise again. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap things up there, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.